topics that people have been talking about in terms of issues with and difficulties and so on with online and moving online as moving the education process online. And in these last two talks, we're going to focus on kind of more on the safety aspects of that. And with it, I'm really delighted that Jennifer has agreed to speak. I work with Jennifer, so I know how good she is. We work together as tutors on online courses. But apart from being a splendid online tutor, she is a vastly experienced ELT teacher, writer, trainer, IT coordinator, creative educational technologist. She is on the committee of the ITEFL MORSIG, the materials committee. She has written course books, and most importantly, in relation to this, as well as writing the guidelines for safety, which you can find on the ITEFL Young Learner SIG website. She's also written the safety section of the playbook for emergency remote teaching, which I'm sure will come up as we begin this talk. So, Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy your talk.
Thank you. What a fabulous introduction. Thank you to the British Council, and thank you to ITEFL for inviting me to speak today, about a topic which I think is extremely important, and it's really nice to have this importance placed upon it finally. And thank you to all the moderators, because it's been a really hard day for them, and it's wonderful that they're giving up their time. And thank everybody for coming, because that shows that you're all interested and also giving up your time to be here. Before I sort of start and get into the talk, I'm leaving these slides for you to have a little look at the data that's on them. So, please do type in the chat box as we're going through. And this particular data is from it's from 2018, so it's a couple of years old now. It was commissioned by the Children's Commissioner of England, and although it is from England, I think because it's 2018, this data is probably much more relevant, much more worldwide. The reason I've chosen it is because I think it's down at the bottom, the link, which maybe we could have that in the chat box. There should be two links, one of which should be the BBC News article, and then I think there should be the Children's Commissioner report. I kind of think of the reason I've chosen it, if it was one piece of material that I think everyone should read, it is this, because it gives you a really good insight into the whole issues around e-safety. So I can't even see my own slides very well. So I just move. So in this report, it's got a really clear infographic visual, and it goes from the age of 0 to 18. And it looks at all the dangers that children may have. For example, from 0, we're talking about connected toys and the data being shared between connected toys they have, or the baby talkers, etc. So I thought this was quite interesting because of the data sharing. And if we're going to talk later about the sharing on social media and sharenting. And I'd like you to have a look at this here. It says 2/3 of identity theft of young people. Apparently in the report, it says that Barclays say that you only really need 3 pieces of data for identity theft, which is name, date of birth, and address. So for example, if you're posting a picture of a child with their birthday, oh, happy birthday, this is my child's birthday, we know their date of birth. We're quite likely to know what their name is, and also from your own data, and also possibly even your address. So I think these are things that we really need to consider as adults. I put the other thing there, the final thing is about Class Dojo, because this is an educational platform. And I was a great fan of Class Dojo. I used to use it all the time. So we're going to talk about that later as well. So moving on, later we've got Boris Radanovic speaking, which is fantastic. He's been working with Internet Matters, I do believe. And this is one of the slides that they use. And I think it's very interesting to look at how important children are in this adult world, that how quickly Pokemon Go reached 50 million users. And there's a link to that, which gives you more information to the 50 million user site. I think there's actually an Indian app that now did it in 13 days, which you could find out. That's just extra information, but it shows how children are navigating in this world. And in the report, Sonia Livingstone, I think her name is, she describes the child as the canary in the coal mine. So interacting in this world, and this is something I feel is just because a child is technically aware, technically savvy, it just doesn't mean that they're not born knowing how to act online. And it's something that I feel very strongly that we need to teach them. So this is kind of like pre-talk information. So this is what I'm talking about today. This image is perhaps a little bit shocking, but I think it brings the message home. So a little bit myself. I was working as, this is probably about 10 years ago, I was working as an IT coordinator, and a couple of things I noticed. I just started as an IT coordinator, sort of on the pedagogy side. A couple of incidents happened, one of which was I found a male teacher exchanging emails with a female pupil of 13. And I thought, oh, that's really not correct. And then we looked at this incident. We found we had some school computers in those days, which we shared, it was 10 years ago, and we found some very inappropriate images on them. And so we did a little bit of investigation. We found out where exactly, what computer it was, what time it had happened, and we traced it. We managed to trace it, found out which teacher had had a class in there, and we managed to trace it down to, and it was an 11-year-old girl who'd been looking at this. So I think we need to expect the unexpected. So we're going to come back to this. I'm looking at the chat as well, which is great. I'm sure that we've got a lot of incidents that people will talk about. So then I thought, again, this is something I've seen with some of the online people like Internet Matters, Child Safety. There's quite a few really good sites that we can look at. And so there's this moral compass idea. What is your position in this? So this is one of the key things I'm going to keep coming back to. What do you feel? Where do you lie? Is it right? Is it wrong? Are you bothered? Where is your moral compass? So I thought about the moral compass of these incidents, and I thought maybe the teacher thought this. I mean, everyone's moral compass is different, and it's going to be different cultures as well. And maybe the girl thought this. And at the end of the day, I haven't been told not to do this. So who was informing them? So then I thought, okay, right, I'm gonna have to do something about this. Right, let's do some teacher training. So we got some teacher training. So we did lots of training, did some sort of situations, we had some awareness. And then we thought, yes, we need to get some policies. So we got some, everybody said, yeah, okay, great, we need policies. I didn't want to suddenly introduce policies and everyone's saying and not listen to it. Why are we having all these policies? So everybody says, yes, we need to get some policies. So they said, write some policies, please. So I thought, okay, right. So I started to try and write some policies, and it's actually quite difficult to write policies. I'm not a policy writer. And then the more I thought about it, we had to have all these different policies. So we've got, which is called an AUP policy, an acceptable use. So that might have been to using the computers, how we're going to use the equipment in the school in those days. And then we might have a code of conduct for the, how you're going to behave for the children and for the teachers. Then there's a disclaimer. For example, imagine we're going to send, I'm going to say to a child, why don't you look at this YouTube video at home? And what happens if an advert comes up that's inappropriate, or the parent finds them surfing somewhere else? So we might need to have a disclaimer saying we're sending this for good educational reasons, but if your child goes off. So it's important to think that these policies are not just protecting, they're also protecting us. So it's very important to have these policies. For a permission form, I'm going to talk later about the use of images. So if we do want to use images, then the parents might sign the permission form. So also acceptance of the children surfing online. But at the end of the day, everyone's context is different, and what might be appropriate for my class or from my school might not be appropriate for your situation. And so we can only at the end of the day provide guidelines, I think. But what I do think is these guidelines need to be much easier to understand. A lot of the policies, for me, it was a lot of sort of bureaucracy. So it needs to be more transparent. They need to be robust. They need to be clearer so that everyone can understand them. It's not just a list of we're not even going to read this. So we managed to get up some policies, and then so we need support for these policies. We need people to read them. So we need to build awareness amongst our staff. We need training. We need to understand ourselves what they mean. There's been a lot of talk about family, the importance of family care providers. I work a lot with very young children as well. So the family, the kind of like, it's often very close, the relationship with very young learners with the families. But I mean, we've noticed particularly during these times, and a lot of talks what we had before, how important the communication, now we've gone online, it's even much more, it's been vital, the communication. We also need a designated person to talk to about safety, and also these policies are going to continually be needed to be revised and updated. For example, when we suddenly went online, but the important thing is here, I think, is that we have the policies, the family know that we have the policies. So consequently, when there are changes, it's much easier we're building up this robust, resilient situation so that when changes happen, we've already got this in place. So we put some policies in place, we communicated them with the families, we revised them, we did some teacher training, and then I tried to sort of do some talks on this, tried to talk to other people about it, other schools, and then we had these kind of more moral compass questions. So if you'd like to have a look at those, well, I'll have a sip of tea. So I don't know if anyone would like to chat in the chat box. I think there's some quite interesting comments here. Okay, I'm too busy to worry about this. I mean, I think we've had, because of the situation, teachers are, Sarah this morning was talking about, a lot of teacher stress. we have a lot to get on, a lot to do. So I think also our workplaces need to facilitate this for us. I want to boast to the world, this is something that worries me. This is going back to, for example, another incident. A friend of mine posts a lot on social media of her young child, often in, I think, inappropriate clothing. Or, I mean, that's another moral question. It's her choice, but is it the child's choice? And I personally don't tend to put any likes of seeing anybody's children or grandchildren on social media, because I find it extremely worrying. And because of the identity issues we've spoken about before, there's facial recognition, and I don't know if we're necessarily asking the children. It's good publicity. Lots of schools post pictures of their children online, which I think is very worrying. It's more convenient for me not to bother. I just can't be bothered, really, to be honest. I don't really want to think about it. I've got enough to do with my classes, but related to the first one. I want to use this digital tool. This is a worrying one. I have a tool, I want to use it, and it's more important than the safety issue. I think safety has to come first, not the fact that we want to use the tool. We'll talk about this later. It's not my responsibility, because maybe it's the parent's responsibility, or the carers. My point is that we're living, especially now because of going online, we're living in a digital world. We've seen how children negotiate in this digital world. And as teachers, as educators, we're going to need to teach them digital literacy, and it's part of communication. They're communicating, it's part of our language. So I think it very much is our responsibility. So moving on, safety first has to be our first, when we're looking at anything online, we need to look safety first, before the tool, before anything else. It's a child's right. So we should have some, I think there's a link to the United Nations Convention of the Child. And if we look at 17 here, they have got the right to get the information, but it can't be harmful. We need to, if as language teachers, we're going to give them access to information, we need to be very careful with it, safety first. And privacy and their reputation, and we need to help teach them how to protect their own reputation and keep them from harm. This is there's a poster which you can get, which is the rights of the child in child-friendly language, so it's simpler for them to understand, and it's downloadable. Okay, so what are the issues? I'm sure that Boris is going to talk about these later. This is from Internet Matters, which is a great organisation. There's lots of stuff here which I'm really excited to learn more about. These are the key safety issues that we're dealing with. And I've highlighted the ones in blue. As we go through the talk, these are the things that worry me, particularly with when we're talking about synchronous platforms, because what could happen is somebody could take a photo of someone's image. They could or imagine, like, you take a photo of me now, like in some strange position, and I look awful. Then you could put it online, you could share it with someone, and everybody would laugh at me. So it's very easy to take someone's image and distort it and use it. There are other ways of cyberbullying, of course, but this is one thing I'll talk about later with synchronous. Equally, a child could share inappropriate content with another child if you haven't really secured the synchronous rooms. And online reputation is another issue that could occur because of this, because of people being very naive, I think, as well. Sometimes, I think somebody talked about this earlier, that some naivety can be not understanding how to act online can also lead to more bullying. And finally, we're going to talk about all these things are important, but the ones in blue I think are particularly relevant to our situation as English language teachers. So here is another of the ITEFL group, which is the Young Learner and Teenager Special Interest Group. And as Sean said at the beginning, I've helped. This page is I'm showing you, this is from their webpage. I think there's a link for this as well. And this is general safeguarding. Here they're talking about the rights of the child again. And there's a special section on safety. So David Valent and all of the committee have been fantastic in supporting online safety issues. And so I helped to try and, which I'm going to talk about the policy there later. And I was also going to write an article on e-safety. So I decided to start to write an article on e-safety, which I have actually written, but I did a previous article because this came up. So this is one, I had to write an article on this because this is one of the main things that you need to, I feel you need to understand about e-safety before you can progress, because this is part of the whole moral compass. There might be a moment for a very specific, important project where you might want to share a photo of an image online, but I think you really need to stop and think about it. So this is kind of like one of the key things for me about understanding the whole issue of online safety for young learners. So if you'd like to have a read of that, because I'm going on and on. The moment you post the school, if you post it for the school, you might as well say you're pinpointing where you can find that child. Also, you might want to turn location services off. There's also, I think, the datification. When I first wrote the article, which I think there's a link to it as well, when I first wrote the article, datification really wasn't one of my main worries, but I now think facial recognition, identity theft, and also we don't know what people are doing with this data. I mean, it could lead to, if someone has mental health issues, could it lead to insurance problems? As I was talking before about online reputation, what happens to this data? And who has the right to choose if your image goes online? Does the child choose it? I mean, I say see celebrity legal battles. Gwyneth Paltrow, her daughter Apple, she's said, there was a big Twitter thing, and she says to her mother, you are not allowed to post images of me without asking me. Madonna has also had problems with her son. There was a big thing where she posted something, you can check this out online, something where she posted a picture of her son in swimming trunks, etc. So who is choosing this? Why does your parent have the right to choose? It's the child who has the right. So if you're a school, are you just going to give a blanket policy, for example, and say, I can post, what happens if the child doesn't like the image? What happens if the child's got braces? It should be the child's right, not necessarily, and they should be able to choose that image, not necessarily the parents or the schools. And as I mentioned before about the school's desire for publicity. So what can we do instead? Let's be positive. So here, let's think about alternatives. Let's focus on the work in process. Like the child with the potato, for example. Focus on the complete work, that's the first one. You know, if you've got a completed project, experiment with other tools. We don't have to see their faces. We can use avatars. A permission form. If we think it's really, really worth it, then let's make it not just easy. Oh, the parents just sign something for everything. Let's make it a one-time permission form for one special project, and then we're giving real value to that project. And above all, stop and think. Do you really need to post it? Is there an alternative? Is it just, can't be bothered to think about it? It's more convenient for me to do this. Oh, I like the tool. So then what happened? Oh, emergency remote teaching happened. Whoa. So that suddenly threw us, it suddenly threw the children into, some people into an online situation whereby the teachers, I mean, I remember here when, I mean, teachers have coped amazingly, and the work's been fantastic, and the community work has been wonderful. We've been hearing that all day, and teachers have been brilliant. And we were thrown into a situation whereby teachers, I mean, I remember here when suddenly supermarket cashiers became like semi-policing people. You know what? You know, you had to with your hand gel and the face masks, and suddenly teachers are been thrown into a situation where they don't know the dangers, what is going to happen with the cameras, with this synchronous teaching. The children, if you haven't got the policies in place, the children don't know what's going to happen. The children don't know, and I'm going to give you some situations that what did I call them before? Incidents. So what kind of things suddenly we've been thrown into people's houses. I live in a block of flats. It's quite possible we have you might hear the dogs here in a minute. There's the dog hour, and there's people sort of like on the roof, and suddenly we're in people's houses. So what have some of these situations been? I have a friend whose mum is who's no longer in the care home that she was in. So she's moving around her computer while she's trying to give classes. We've had people teaching, we know all about the connectivity issues. For those we've had people who is sitting in the rooms with several other people. We've had people in their bedrooms sitting in their pajamas. We've had teachers, are teachers wearing the correct, you know, have the teachers been giving guidelines? I mean, you can't see, I mean, do you know where I'm from? There we go, we'll have a look. Well, you've got to be careful about what you've got in the background, for example. I mean, what I have in the background could give away information about myself. It's also brought up a massive economical divide. We've seen the amazing work that people have been doing all across the whole of the world. I mean, even with been using this to provide food for people, for their communities. And also within that, you know, we're suddenly thrown into people's homes. And we really need to think about these issues. As we said before, you know, a parent suddenly comes in while a child's doing something online and adjusts their thing. You know, they might be wearing inappropriate clothes. So we need to we need to communicate, expect the unexpected, like we mentioned before. And these are just some of the issues. I've heard of many more. And I think what it did give us the opportunity, and also I think what it has done on the positive side, apart from all the fantastic community, it has raised the importance of the safety. It's the parents are beginning to question, how safe is this? How safe is my child being with other children, chatting on these platforms with their children at home, for example. And then we had the massive Zoom issue for those people who use Zoom, and a lot of places, because the rooms weren't sure, because there was no encryption, etc. And people could get into the rooms and were displaying inappropriate things. So it brought up a lot of issues. So, right, and here is a comment from UNICEF about this. And here is the link to the implications of protecting children online during COVID-19. So this is a good link to look at. And here, again, what it points out is that having the safeguarding policies in place is going to give you structure. If they exist. So we need to make really sure that these these policies do exist, and that they're clear, and that we understand them, and that we're discussing it and we're talking about it. So as Sean said at the beginning, what happened is I was extremely worried about the situation. Other people were kind of like messaging me, and we were saying that what is going to happen with all these, with everybody suddenly thrown online? Where is the safety? So got in contact with Claire Venables. We contacted, and there was an emotion. We decided to try and Claire was writing this. She wanted to get it quickly because she was very worried about the situation. Her teachers she was working with, they were, as everybody was, suddenly thrown into this situation, didn't know what to do. So this is a mix of ideas that came from the community. And in this, we looked at some e-safety issues and tried to make some policy. And during this, because as I said before, the policies are, oh yes, it's a completely free download, where Sean's put the link in there for you. And because the policies are not that acceptable, I wanted to make them accessible. So this is the way I tried to do it. It's fairly common sense, is compare online with how we teach in the face-to-face classroom. Let's think about the safety procedures we undergo in face-to-face, and let's think about that, remembering to expect the unexpected, think about your moral compass, and let's look at it in this way, and safety first. So this is what I tried to do. I'm going to go back, showing you again this is the e-safety policy, because what I'm now going to do is going to go through the slides so you can go back to it. You can, so that they don't completely fill the categories, but they more or less do. So if you want to refer back to this is why I'm showing it. It should help you understand the comments there. So that's why I'm showing you this. So I think there should be a link to that as well. So we don't disclose a child's personal information face-to-face, we don't. So online, we talked about the images. Then this refers to the blog post. Equally, these are just some things that you can think about. Under the 18s, you can use the collection of numbers, email addresses. You should go through. Don't have the children's. You would do it through the family, which is either it goes to the school or you personally, but don't have the minors. Protecting yourself, because if anything does happen, it's all been done through the family members. As we've heard today, you know, in lots of the talks, I had the importance of the family. Okay, educational platforms, we're going to look at this a little bit later, like those that generate code. So you don't have to have Some platforms generate codes, so you don't have to have emails and people sign in. Okay, right. This is a key issue as well. Don't leave. We provide a safe space. I'm not going to talk about platforms, and we don't leave children unsupervised. So in the classroom, our classroom is safe. We don't leave. I actually went into a young learner classroom and someone left a big glass paperweight on a bookshelf. You know, it's so dangerous. We don't do that in the classroom, and we don't leave them unsupervised. And this is why I think it's really important, and I know there's going to be a few polemical things I'm going to say now, but you do not leave a child unsupervised in the classroom, and you shouldn't leave them unsupervised in a synchronous platform. So we're going to start with asynchronous. Asynchronous, let me explain synchronous and asynchronous because I know it's complicated. Asynchronous, it took me ages to get my head around it. Asynchronous is not happening in real time. So, for example, you send a message and someone gets it like a day later. So it's not happening in real time. There's an article I've written, again for the young learner, it's free. I'll tell you at the end, which explains the difference. So this isn't live videoing. So it's just like, I think it was Abigail was mentioning, no, it wasn't Abigail, somebody was mentioning the WhatsApp channel where they were sending some lovely work through to the children. That was happening asynchronously, that they would then do later. It was Abigail. So that was asynchronous. So sending the work through, they'd do it later, send it back, etc. Right, there are some asynchronous tools available, which are like closed platforms. So one of which I mentioned is Class Dojo. There's some other ones. I mean, I'm not putting them here because I don't want to endorse them. There's another one, there's Seesaw, which is another one. Edmodo might be better for older children. All of these, so they're safe platforms. And asynchronous is really a lot safer. So we can make the most of those platforms. If you're using any and you'd like to put them in the chat box, then please do. I'll just check my notes. There we are. Okay, thank you, Juliana. Any more? Any specifically for children? Oh, yes. Okay. I will say this. There are some places. I wonder if partly because we often need to look at the state school systems to find out safer work going on. I sometimes wonder because if the ELT world is a bit unregulated at times. Oh, sorry. So, for example, when we go to async, there's the Scottish. I think Paul can probably add the link to this later. I think there was a British Council webinar where someone from the Scottish system was talking about a platform they have, which is called Glow, GLOW, and that's a very safe platform where everything happens within it. There's also e-twinning, I believe, in the EU, where they have a synchronous thing that's happening all within a closed platform. So let's continue. Right, so I'm going to talk about asynchronous and synchronous platforms. So is anything free? We've mentioned Class Dojo and the data. I know we're going to be using these thanks Paul, these we just don't have the money, so we're using free platforms, but I think we need to be very aware of any data collection that's happening on. So Class Dojo is a behavior app. I use the My Story so that there is no, you can, depending on what you use, you can make sure that there's less data being collected. So you need to think about that as well. Age limit for tools and platforms. Right, so for example, Zoom. The point about synchronous platforms is they were not designed. They were designed, most of them weren't designed educationally. Virtually none of them were designed for children, virtually none. So the age limit for Zoom is 16. And for example, social media, there's virtually nothing under 13. There is, for older children, there's a new guide that's come out. I don't know if Boris will talk about it, using Facebook for, there's a link to later. I think there is some link to the synchronous stuff, and there is a guide for using Facebook with learners for over 13. But because these platforms are not designed for, they're just not designed for children, then you're going to have to be really, really careful how you use them, and talk about, you need to set up your, we'll look in a minute about secure your room settings. So if you look below, these are some settings. You always need to think about safety first, expect the unexpected. So this is, the access is about somebody out of your environment coming in, someone just crashing like we had with Zoom. The identification is to make sure that someone, okay, identification with the camera or not. In some situations, this is why we can only give guidelines, because if you've got poor bandwidth, as we know, you may have to have the camera on, or your situation may be, you may don't want to see your, you don't want to, because of the situation that you live in, you might not want anyone to see how's your situation. You might be sharing with, you know, a load of other people doing in the same room, the noise, you might have to have, so consequently, the communication with the families is important, so that if the child doesn't want to identify with the camera, that this has been sorted between people, between the communication between the family and the school. And all the circumstances are going to change. So supervision, right, this is about, if you're leaving a child unsupervised, so if you have a private chat, they can talk to each other, you can't see it, and they could be saying something extremely offensive or bullying someone. So if you're sharing a screen, somebody could share something offensive. If you're sharing a file, someone could share something offensive. So you have to disable it so that the children are supervised. If they want to share a file, they can share it through you. And the breakout rooms. In Zoom, we had a question on the talk, which on the course that Sean mentioned at the beginning. Somebody said to me, I've disabled the breakout rooms. This is in the free, I think it's a free version, but I've disabled the breakout rooms. However, I've disabled the screen sharing and fast, but however, in breakout rooms, once they go into breakout rooms, it comes on again. And we've been in contact with Zoom, but this is a very worrying setting, because that means you think you've disabled it, and then once you're in breakout rooms, it's not disabled. So this needs checking by someone who knows a lot more about this than me. Okay, breakout rooms. Problem with breakout rooms in Zoom is that they are unsupervised. I believe in Google Meet, you can see what's going on. I'm going to say, I do not think that you should not be leaving children unsupervised. So you shouldn't be using breakout rooms if you can't see them. Because why? Because they could take a photo of each other and use it. They could share something. They could show, this is the danger of them. And I know it's controversial, but I do not think they should be used if they're being unsupervised. And then, of course, we have the problem of hybrid. And this is not in the policy because we didn't realise, again, these policies keep having to be updated and keep needing to be up with the times, because I'm extremely worried that people are going to broadcast the children in the classrooms. So we're getting back to the images thing. So that is something which I think really needs to be contemplated, and policies need to be written about it. So, synchronous tools we've mentioned. I'm just pointing out really what is in the, you will see this in the young learner thing. Breakout rooms, what we need to do about breakout rooms is look for alternatives for them, and that's kind of where the community, we should be brainstorming how we can look for alternatives for breakout rooms if you're using, and also the technology keeps changing, so hopefully Zoom will be able to change the platform where we will be able to observe the children, we will be able to supervise them in breakout rooms. This is important. This is why it's particularly important, because we need the caregivers or parents, they need to understand that if they cannot take screenshots or recordings of the children, because again, it's the same thing as before. So we provide safe materials. The same with e-learning materials, be them synchronous or asynchronous, check them before. Check them particularly for adverts. Well, it's common sense. Again, it's common sense. Watch them through. And raise awareness with the children that if it makes them uncomfortable, one very good thing is to take a screenshot. And also for teachers to protect yourselves. If there's something, take a screenshot and keep it and report it to someone. And YouTube also, you know, if you're using a YouTube video and something happens, like an advert flashes up, like, you know, we also need to know how to quickly react to this kind of thing. So, behaving in a professional manner. I mentioned before in the background, I try to keep a neutral background, or to encourage people to go behind a door if possible, you know, even if it's just a wall. To be aware, there's some things have the background tools. Not in bedrooms, please, you know, it's kind of like, and ideally, you know, a family overseeing, dress professionally. Homeschool link. Okay, this is back to Claire again, and I don't have a link for this. But this, we've mentioned the importance of the families, and it's lovely to see that how much more involved they're actually becoming in education. And this is another community thing that you'll find it through, if you find through Facebook, you'll find her there. And this was about the difficulties that she found that the parents were having. And so she gives some really nice tips about how to involve them in the remote learning experience, which is very nice. This doesn't quite, so also this is, you know, also not just the parents, it's all about the everyone in the school making, you know, how we make decisions together. And we prepare our classes on a face-to-face. Oops. So, we're going to explore, raise awareness, engaging, you know, materials to help highlight e-safety. And also, here's this moral compass. Look at your own privacy settings, passwords, social media profiles. We all make mistakes. I make tons of mistakes. You know, learn from them, and let's just, you know, watch your own personal photos, be better informed, be careful online. So we're coming to the end of this. Above all, you know, let's use this moral compass. Let's think about our role in this and our commitment to it. So this is how I would really sum up the key issues I feel are the importance of not using images of children unless it's there may be moments where you feel it's really, really important, but and there are some wonderful projects happening where it is necessary, but let's give it the important. Let's not just do it because it's good publicity for our school. Let's do it because it's got there's a genuinely really good project behind it. Let's always think about safety. Let's get some policies. Let's get support for our policies. And I would call clear policies. I'd like to call, you know, a call for schools to get together, for teachers associations to get together, for let's make clear policies. Let's help each other with this community, and make these accessible for teachers to understand. And let's have a real commitment to the issue, and use our moral compass. And thank you very much for listening. I believe that's my last slide. Oh yeah, great. So yeah, let's not, you know, let's use this as an opportunity. People are much more interested in the importance of understanding digital safety. So let's get our houses in order. Let's create this robust situation so that when things do occur, we will be prepared. And thank you very much. I think so. I shall stop sharing my screen now.
Would you like some questions?
Woof. Yeah, sure. Are there any?
We've got a couple of minutes left for some questions. So I'll go straight to the controversy. So Maria then says, so would you use breakout rooms?
Is that the question?
Yeah.
No, because not if you not on Zoom, not unless you can't. I mean, because you can't see. No, because you can't see the children. So what we need to do is think of alternatives, and as a community, brainstorm alternatives. You know, alternatives to using breakout rooms. We can't be in the classroom, can we? You know, when we were online doing synchronous teaching, I can't say I would like to be in the classroom, but I can't be. You know, we find alternatives. You know, it's not. But I worry that the tool is taking preference over the safety.
Yeah, and you and I talk about this a lot. I know. I would. A lot of the people in the room. I understand where you're coming from. With Zoom, for example, a lot of people in the room, their stakeholder, their director, their whatever, will have told them that they have to use Zoom and probably breakout rooms as well. So how you've given lots of advice and information and links that we can look up. But I mean, what would you say to a teacher that you've just told teachers don't use breakout rooms because they're not safe? Yeah. But how that teacher then has to go to their school and say, hang on, I've just learned this. I mean, how would you suggest that that's broached and dealt with when the state, like in anything, the stakeholders pushing down and suggesting they do?
Yeah, well, I think this is the, yeah, I mean, I think this is the issue with yeah, I mean, in my situation, this is kind of what I feel I have to say, because this is the, this is my message, is that safety should come first. And well, I think we need to look at other alternatives to breakout rooms. And so what do you say to be honest, how many people will actually turn around and say to their schools, this, you know, if people turn around and said to their schools, we need e-safety policies, that would be great. You know, I think there are issues that, like, we need you not to be posting images of our children, of children without asking them. It's a scale down, isn't it? You know, pick your battles.
And I think you're right. I mean, I'm going to know you're right because, as I said, we talk about this a lot. Yeah, and I think I think the point is fits into kind of almost what we said a lot today about this. I think there's a set of things that happened in March and April when we all went online, but now looking longer term, we now need to look at make sure that those policies are in place.
It's context, isn't it? Everyone's got a different context as well. You know. So.
There's a question from Facebook, which is it's more teaching orientated, but it's to do with the question, with the idea of cameras. And Sybil says, well, as our job as teachers or teaching involves a lot of non-verbal communication. In the classroom, we read body language and so on. But so without being able to see each other, if the cameras are off, as you've suggested, do you think the teachers and students would feel the same in class?
Oh, I would try and say no. I would try and say have the cameras on.
Okay.
But I understand my message is to try and have the cameras on for identification purposes. But I understand that it's the context is what I'm trying to say is I would definitely try and say for safety reasons try and have cameras on. But there may be cases where it's context. So that's kind of why with young learners, if you have the family on board and you have this communication, they've said, look, my child cannot have the cameras on because or on mute because there's 10 of us in this room in the house.
No,
or we don't have the, but then you can. It's the communication with the families that. It's not a teenager just deciding that they're not going to have it on, and that's quite frightening, isn't it? Really, that's something quite different.
It definitely is, yeah. I mean, and it is a topic. I'm being a bit devil's advocate throwing these questions at you because as you say, context is important, and everybody needs to come to their own degree and talk about it if necessary. But the ones that did come up. Particularly from what you were saying, there are a few more, but time is getting against us. I will put all the links that I'd be putting them in as we go along, but I will in a moment when I hand to Paul. In the chat box, I'll drop all the links again for everybody so you can take them out there. So I think it just remains now to say thank you to Jennifer Dobson for bringing us her insight and all that wealth of resources and information to look at and think about, and a very important area to look at as we go forward in this situation of being online and so on. So thank you, Jennifer. Lots of love.
Thank you very much
from you in the Facebook group
thank you.
and in the chat box. So thank you for now, and then we'll stop the recording, and we are almost ready for our 5